Hi, and welcome to lesson 2 of basic HTML and CSS. We're going to create our first web page today, so that's super exciting. So what we want to accomplish in this video, first we want to know the difference between a web page and a website. Second, we'll create our first HTML file. And third, you'll know the required components of a valid HTML file. So those are the three big things we want to accomplish today, and let's get started. What you'll need for this lesson, you'll need a web browser as always. Again, I'm going to be using Chrome, just so if you want to follow along exactly with what we're doing, that's what I'll be using. You'll also need a text editor. I'll be using Sublime Text, but if you're on Windows, you can use Notepad++ or VS Code. I would recommend Sublime Text. I'll provide a link in the lesson to download it. I will also provide a link to a zip folder if you'd like to follow along. I'll have all of the files marked as before and after. So the files before we began the video and the files after we finished the video in case you need to reference them. So let's go ahead and get started. The best way to learn is to just go ahead by doing and practicing. So let's get started. So the first thing you'll do is, I'm going to do a little bit of a split screen here, but you're going to create a folder on your desktop called My First Website. And again, if you just want to download this as a zip file, that will be available to you as well. So we will create a folder called My First Website. That is where our files will live. And I'm going to do a little bit of a split screen here. Or actually, you know what? I'll kind of make this large for you so that you can easily follow along. So we'll just go ahead and open Sublime Text. If you're using Notepad++ or VS Code, open that file and it will automatically open a new document. So what I'm going to do before I do anything is I'm going to save this document. So we'll just do File, Save, and I'm going to save it in my folder called My First Website. And I'm going to name that document index.html. So we remember from the last video, any file with a extension of .html can be opened and viewed in a web browser as a web page. So we've created our first web page. We can open that web page by just double clicking it, and you'll notice that there is absolutely nothing in it, which is totally fine. So let's switch back and jump back into our HTML file. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easy for you to see. And now what we're going to do is we're going to learn the most important components of any HTML file. So let's get started. So the first required component is what's called a doc type declaration. A doc type declaration. This basically just tells the browser what kind of document it's opening. So browsers are basically machines, they're computers, and they're pretty dumb. So you kind of have to tell them what they're dealing with, otherwise they won't know what to do with the file. So to create a doc type declaration, or to create any tag in HTML, it's an opening caret, and then usually the content of the tag goes in between, and then a closing caret. Okay, so for a doc type declaration, it's a little bit different. We do an opening tag and a exclamation point, and we're going to type in doc type, and we're going to declare the document type as HTML. So that is the first thing that every website must have is a doc type declaration. So it's as simple as that. We just wrote our first HTML tag. Now, the second thing that I want to point out is that we want to have an actual HTML tag. So the doc type can serve as your HTML tag. I like to actually open the HTML tag right at the top of the document. So go ahead and do that. So again, opening caret, HTML, closing caret. So here is fundamental rule number 1 in HTML. Every tag that we open, so we just open this tag, must close. Okay, every tag that opens must close. So at the very bottom of our document, I am going to close the tag. To close a tag, we do opening caret / and then the name of the tag and then closing caret. Okay, so we've opened HTML and we've closed it here at the bottom. That means everything inside of this tag will be wrapped inside of what's called an HTML tag. Okay, so every tag that opens must close is rule number 1. Rule number 2 is tags close in the opposite order in which they open. Okay, so let me give you an example. So every HTML document must have a doc type declaration. Every HTML document also must have what's called a head tag. So we're going to open our head tag, and on the very next line, we're going to close our head tag. Okay. You'll notice if you're in Sublime Text, it'll automatically close the tag for you if you just type in caret and the /. So we've opened our head tag. All of this is contained inside of our HTML tag. So every tag that opens must close. Tags close in the opposite order in which they open, meaning we close our head tag first before we close our HTML tag. Okay. You'll notice a little bit of a pattern here. So our head tag is a tag in HTML that allows us to put metadata, information about the website. This is kind of where your SEO information, search engine optimization, that's where a lot of this content goes. It doesn't actually get rendered on the page. It's not viewable on the page, but it's information that gets sent to the browser. So think of the head tag as like a direct message to the browser. It doesn't go to the audience, the final viewer of the website, but the browser still reads it. Inside of your head tag, you've got to have at least one tag, and it's required, and it's called the title tag. So this is the title of your page, your web page. And so we can name this anything, but we're going to name this my first web page. So again, every tag that opens must close. Okay, so inside of our title tag, I've got some content, and you can call it whatever you want. You could call it hello world. You could call it my website, my portfolio, whatever you wanted to call it. This title tag is extremely important for Google search optimization. So whatever you put in here typically is one of the main things Google looks for in terms of content. So you want to make this, as you move forward in building your website, you want to make your title tags pretty descriptive. So my first web page is not a very good one now, but this is just an example of just for the purposes of this course. So if we go back into our folder and we open index, you'll notice that there is, did I save this? Let me make sure I forgot to save. So make sure you save, and you can reopen the index.html, and you'll notice there's nothing on the page still. So again, what I had said is the head tag is like your direct line or your direct message to the browser, but you don't actually view any of this on the site. But what you will notice is inside of the title tag, that's what gets rendered in the browser tab here. So my first web page, right? So we could change this to some other information can go here. I'm just adding this to show you that whatever we add there will show in the browser here. So all of these things that you see in these tabs here are title tags. Okay, so every web page must have a doc type declaration. It must have an HTML tag. It must have a head tag, and it must have a title tag. Now, the last thing it must have before we can make this an official web page is a body tag. I'm going to close this all the way down at the bottom right before HTML. Okay? You'll notice I'm indenting things to kind of show you the hierarchy of how the web page actually is structured. So inside of the body tag, anything you put inside of this body tag, you'll be able to see on the actual web page itself. Okay, so I could actually not use any HTML tags, and I can just put random text in here. And if we do that, it will show up on the web page. But it's actually much better to use HTML tags to describe the content that we're actually putting on our website. So the first thing we'll do is I'm going to, for this first website or for this first web page, I'm going to create a Christmas list. Okay, so I'm not going to actually mark this up in HTML yet. I'm just going to write down my Christmas list. Okay, so let's see, new computer, new monitor, and a new keyboard. Let's just say I want a new setup for my my home office. Now, this is just text inside of the body tag. It's not marked up. It's not described by any HTML tags other than the body tag. If we refresh, all it is just, it'll just show up as a string of text. Now, that's probably not what we want, right? So what we want to do is we want to describe what this is using the HTML, okay? So if we were to describe what this first line was, I'd probably say this is a heading, right? So it's the first heading on my page. So I'm going to give it an H1 tag. Now, HTML gives us, I want to say 7 levels, up to 7 levels of heading tags. So in terms of building out the hierarchy, if you had a second level heading, you guessed it, you would probably use H2. So maybe a second level heading, like a subheading, would be for Christmas 2020. Okay, so H1, H2, and you can go all the way down to H3, H4, H5, H6, H7. I typically only go maybe 3 or 4 levels on any given web page, but you do have the option to go up to much more than that. So we have a heading, a first level heading, we've got a second level heading. Now, it's a list, right? And it's not a numbered list because they're not really in any particular order. And so there's an HTML tag for both numbered lists and unnumbered lists or unordered lists. Also, you can think about them as bulleted lists. So the HTML tag for bulleted list or unordered list is UL, which is shorthand for unordered list. Okay, and inside of each UL is a list item element. Okay, I'm going to close this list after all of the remaining items inside of the list. So here's where it opens, here's where it closes, and inside of each of these, inside of this unordered list is 3 items, and each of these need a tag of li, which is shorthand for list item. So I'm going to add a list item for my computer, a list item for my monitor, and a list item for my keyboard. Okay, so we have 3 unique HTML elements. We have a header 1, a heading 2, an unordered list, and a list item. So I guess that's 4 unique HTML elements that we're actually going to see on the web page. So if we save this and we refresh, this content now is going to have some structure to it. So remember from last video, I said HTML controls the structure and the content of your web page. So if I refresh, you'll automatically notice we've got a heading 1, which is the biggest font size, a heading 2, which is a little bit smaller, and then a list that automatically gets bullet points added to it. Now, if this was, in order, so maybe we would add a 3rd level heading in order of importance. I could actually just change this UL to an OL, which stands for ordered list instead of unordered list. And if I save that, this will automatically get numbered. And so you'll see heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. And this gets numbered 1, 2, 3. Okay. So already we've learned several bits of HTML. Now, the other last tag before closing out this video is the paragraph tag. So this is what you would use just for regular paragraph text. So the reason why I want these items is that it will help with my home office setup. Okay. So we're going to put paragraph text in a paragraph tag. Now, a couple things I want to point out, and then we'll finish up this video. First, do not worry about how it looks, right? Visual design all gets controlled by our CSS file, which we're not going to actually create until a later video. Right now, the main thing I want us to focus on is using tags that are semantic. That means tags that actually provide some description of what the content is, right? So if it's not a heading, we shouldn't be using heading tags. Or if it's not paragraph text, we shouldn't be using the paragraph tag. So I've noticed this, a lot of amateur web designers will do this. They'll say, okay, this Christmas list it's just too big. I don't really like it. So I'm going to change this. I want smaller. I'm going to change this to a heading 4 so I can make it a little smaller. So, okay, that looks a little better. No, well, that's actually not a good way to do it. Don't worry about the design until later when we use CSS, but worry about the structure and the content of the web page itself. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Right, so if it doesn't belong in a list, don't use the list. If it doesn't belong in a heading, don't use the heading just because you want the text to be larger or something like that. So that is our first HTML web page. The last thing I want to do is I want to differentiate web page from website. So a web page is a single page. So index.html is a single page. A website is a page is a group of pages that are linked together. Okay, so just like you would see on any normal website, you'll be able to click links and click around and it will load up new pages. Those pages are components of a larger website. So just to clarify sort of some terminology, we created a web page. We haven't created a website yet. Once we start to create multiple pages and we link those pages together, that's when we can call it a website. Okay, so that's all I had. You can experiment if you'd like. You can add different tags if you'd like. But for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to get our feet wet. And just as a quick recap, here is the 5 things we need for any valid web page. We need the doc type declaration. In this case, we're using HTML. We need an HTML tag, which basically encompasses the entire content of the web page. We need a head tag. This, again, is what we do to communicate with the browser. We need a title tag, and we need a body tag. Okay, so those are the 5 things we need for any given website. And then the other sort of things that I want to reiterate is every tag that opens must close. And you can nest tags, but they must close in opposite order in which they open. So that's kind of a confusing way of putting it. But when you nest tags inside of other tags, you close the child before you close the parent. So for example, the easiest example is this ordered list. So the OL is the parent, the LI is the child. You got to close these child tags before you close this parent tag. Okay, so that's it. We created our first website. Next video, we're going to start adding images. We're going to start adding links, and we're going to really start to create the infrastructure for an actual website. So until next time, I will see you later.